So I think you can see the story building, and as we move into this next section about future opportunities and possibilities. So Larry there touched upon augmented reality, touched on some of the issues in there, but he also, a lot of his original work has been around captioning. And I'm delighted now to welcome not only a panelist speaker, but also our sponsor for the day, Gio Galvez, who's VP of Business Development for Syncwords. Gio, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I'd love to start my video, but I just need someone to enable that. Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Giovanni Galvez from Syncwords, New York, and I'd like to tell you, talk a little bit about the state of things for virtual events, especially captioning for real time in 2021. This is something I have a little slide deck that I'm going to accompany with my thing. And when this whole thing happened, this pandemic, it really shifted the captioning industry and put it onto a tailspin. Like we saw the broadcasters cancel all sports, all the live events and conferences and all sorts of things ended up becoming virtual. And so there was all of a sudden a surge of need to be able to caption live virtual events, right? And these events happen 24/7. There was a shortage of captioners available at all times of the day, scheduling a workforce. There was a lot of problems, right? I'm talking about people that work in the trenches that had to deal with this. There was also a demand for taking captioning that's live and translating that to multiple languages in real time. And that was something that we needed to solve. But we couldn't reinvent the wheel, right? We had to look at what we needed to do with what was there now, right? The existing live streaming workflows, the existing platforms that were there. And we couldn't touch the video. That was a big no-no, right, for live. And there was no hardware really. Traditionally, if you don't know, for live captioning, it was originally designed to work with broadcast hardware, right? Like rack mount devices in the machine room that added captioning into a live signal. And none of that was there. In fact, even if certain folks, including broadcasters, had access to that, they were also working from home, doing the news from home. And so there needed to be a different way to do the real-time captioning. And of course, scaling that, right, around the clock. So what we did is we managed to figure out a way where we could not only connect the broadcast chain into the virtual event space and adapt the protocols for broadcasts so that people can, that our captioning can caption things like Zoom, or they can caption WebEx, or they could do virtual conferences, right? Without having to completely change their software, their workflow, their day in, day out type of protocols. And then that opened up an opportunity to get their accuracy, the high level of accuracy of the human captioner, and leverage things like machine translation. And that's something that actually is quite popular now, especially for virtual events, as now it's the boundaries of where people can connect to the events is kind of no longer there, right? You don't have to get on a plane to watch this conference, for example. You can just open up your Zoom. The other aspect to it is how the captioners started receiving the audio. Traditionally there was a phone bridge, there was all this machinery, there had special software so they could receive the audio and start typing. And now, because Zoom is so popular, other things like Chime or even Microsoft Teams, captioners now are actually receiving the audio for live captioning through these types of technologies, these low latency audio feeds from virtual webinar platforms and meeting platforms. And they're very versed in that. That's a huge shift. because before that, before 2020, it was always some proprietary device or some proprietary phone bridge that they received the audio from. So that's how they're able to get the audio to send the captioning live. Now, there is live ASR. You know, I saw someone that talked about that earlier, and it has become better. However, because everyone's working from home, everyone has different microphones. And so the audio levels, the quality of the audio, background noise, it all is affecting the live ASR. So in many cases for working from home, virtual meetings, it's not very reliable. So human capture should be used whenever possible. And then of course, the MT, right? The MT is great because once we receive the captioning from the human, we can do all sorts of things with it, right? And we can put it onto a live stream. We see broadcasters now taking advantage of that to grow their audience. We can put it into something that works on a mobile phone, so people can just select the languages that they want to read when they're watching the news or sports. And of course, in virtual events. Right now, even, you know, as we're doing live captioning now, we can actually take that and translate it. So we had to move away from like the standard technologies, like something called CEA 608. And that is typically how live streaming works, at least generally speaking, for things like Facebook and Vimeo and YouTube. And we went with a different protocol altogether, something that doesn't touch the video. You know, when you're talking about CO8, it talks about live broadcast. It's really designed for the television broadcast space because they already have all those machineries, you know, and the descriptions that you see that I put it down here, they talk about, you know, the equipment that they have, the encoders that they have. The average person that's doing a live event doesn't have access to any of that. And also there's limitations with that. You were only able to put one language. It couldn't be an Asian language or a Unicode language. So taking that completely out of the equation was something we did in 2020, and now in 2021, it's become mainstream, where now virtual platforms, even conference platforms, you know, the live streaming workflow is completely separate from the captioning workflow. The captioning is actually just sending the data, the text, in a way that viewers can consume it. And so there's really very low risk in doing captioning for live streaming now, because we've adapted to that, right? And it was quite a feat to do it in such a short amount of time. But it's something that we can do, and we see now in Zoom, as mentioned earlier, you can turn the captions on and off. Later, I'll actually put a link in the chat. You guys can actually see the translations if you're interested. And so what's the future hold? Really, this is kind of the last part of my presentation, you know, because we're leveraging now real-time captioning, new protocols, delivery to virtual conferences. We see that now with Zoom, WebEx, and all sorts of other things, live streaming. But what about voice? This is something that we're experimenting with, where the voice can also take advantage of the actual timing, the proper grammar and punctuation that a live captioner can provide us, and then have that translated in voice, so text to speech, rather than speech to text in another language. But even going beyond that, some of the things we've experimented with is to be able to really look at the inflections, the emotions of the actual speaker. So I'll play something for you. Here's someone you may recognize, Dr. Fauci, doing like a presentation here.
The seasonal flu that we deal with every year has a mortality of 0.1%. The stated mortality overall of this, when you look at all the data, including China, is about 3%.
So all of that was captioned. The timing was done. Everything is there. And now here it is in Spanish. using AI.
La gripe estacional con la que lidiamos cada año tiene una mortalidad de 0,1%. La mortalidad declarada en general de esto, cuando vemos toda la información, incluyendo a China, está cerca del 3%. Esto,
And so with that example, you saw that, like we're able to also, using AI, we're able to measure the original speaker. And when we do the text to speech in another language, we're able to capture the nuances of the way he speaks, his timing, his delivery. And this is something that we feel is going to be the future, especially for folks that require, localization. Let's say there's people who, let's say are blind, but they speak a different language. So this is another way that this could be leveraged. So we're very excited about what the future holds. We feel that these technologies can be readily be delivered for both live and pre-recorded media. And with that, I think the future is bright, and I guess when you say, when you get lemons, you make lemonade. And in the case of 2020 and 2021, with the huge shift to digital delivery, a live delivery, virtual events, meetings, webinars, we feel that all of these technologies can be leveraged to add a better, more accessible and better user experience for everyone. So with that, I'm grateful to be included in this panel, and I'd love to know if there's any questions or.
We'll come on to questions at the end. We'll run through the other things first and then come back to that. But you music to my ears, because my degree was in computational linguistics back in the early 80s. And we were building the early systems that started to do that machine translation from French to German and German to English. So brilliant, great stuff. And it's good to see.